Hi there. Welcome to Facebook Live on Wednesday nights. Leslie Karen Hammond here, the Empowering Story Whisperer. I shared on Facebook a little bit earlier today that, Spirit, as I refer to, you may say God, Buddha, or Jesus. Well, Spirit has been calling on me to really step up. And I'm sure those of you out there who are walking the spiritual path know what that means, to step up and not be completely comfortable, but just going for it anyway. So that's what this is about. It's about me being given an opportunity to share and to give back and to maybe present a new perspective on something and give you an opportunity to take some of this and apply it to your own life. So I had to chuckle because the theme around this evening is about permission. And initially, it was going to be focused around asking for permission and when we feel the need to ask someone for permission to do something. And the closer we got to the airing of this, it occurred to me that, you know what? It may be more important or equally important to talk about not necessarily asking other people for permission to do things, but the things that we don't give ourselves permission to do. Then I started to write a list of all the things that either I may presently be struggling with or I've struggled with in the past, and I am willing to bet you'll be able to resonate with a couple of these things. So for example, the first one on my list, and for any of you who are entrepreneurs or you're moms, or you are working the day job and then trying to fit in what you're passionate about at night and on the weekends. And I mean, if you've got teenagers and kids, they've got activities and you're being pulled in so many different directions. So you of all people will appreciate this. How often do you give yourself permission to rest? I know, just saying it out loud, it sounds really crazy. Like, of course I would give myself permission to rest if I was absolutely exhausted. But you know what? There have been plenty of times where that has not been the case. So my question for you is, if you're exhausted, do you really think that you'll be able to step up and to perform and do everything that you need to do to the best of your ability if you are that exhausted? And, for me, one of the biggest things that I just couldn't go to bed if there were any dishes left in the sink. And regardless of how tired I was, I would always make sure that the dishwasher got loaded or, washed them by hand, whatever the case was, because I just couldn't let it go. Needed to do that. Well, now, okay, so if there's a couple dishes in the sink, no big deal. The world's not going to come to an end. It was as though I needed permission to leave dirty dishes in the sink. Go figure. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Next thing on my list, and I bet this is on yours too. Have you ever given yourself permission to be imperfect? So many times we need to show up a certain way, and everything has to be just in place. And for so many women, men included, we feel that if we don't put something out in the world that is quote unquote perfect, that will be frowned upon, we won't get any credit, people will judge us. And over the years, I have come to embrace the term good enough. Took a long time to get there because I took everything personally. Has that ever happened to you? Where you take things so personally that good enough isn't an option? Maybe you've taken some risks in the past and things didn't work out the way that you thought they would, or better yet, someone else let you know that things didn't work out the way they thought they should. And what may have started off as just a little bit of concern got completely blown out of proportion by what somebody else thought. So permission to be imperfect. And for the record, that particular one is going to really be a test over the course of the next, who knows how many months. At the very least, I am committed to doing these weekly Facebook Lives for 90 days. So that is on average, there'll be a dozen of these that come out. And it's pretty much guaranteed there'll be some hair not in the right place days. There'll be some makeup isn't going to be on the face days. May even be some days where, who knows, something just isn't lined up. But that's okay, because it's about making the commitment and keeping it, regardless of how perfect anything is. Perfection is so overrated. If you could adopt practice makes progress instead of perfection or perfect, then whew, you could take a deep breath and let a load off. Okay, next thing. Oh, you'll love this. Who would have thought you needed permission to have fun? Guilty. I can't tell you how many times that my husband Mark and I have planned on going to do something fun, and one or both of us we were so wound up about a project that we needed to get done, or some tasks that were on the list, that we would end up convincing, I say convincing loosely because it didn't really take that much convincing, but we would be able to easily talk the other one into just dissing the commitment and saying, you know what? We don't need to do that. And that would be, yeah, okay, you're right. You know what? There's a lot going on. We don't need to do this. And there's one very specific incident that I recall where we were going to Plymouth Plantation. I hadn't been in a long time. He hadn't been in a long time. And we get in the car, and much to my surprise, I was practically grinding my teeth. I was so angry and frustrated that I wasn't working because, the other piece of this is that it was in the middle of the week. Middle of the week. It just didn't seem right. How is it? Hi there. I don't know where that heart came from, but thank you. Oh, and I don't have my contact. Oh, okay. Hi, Lori. Thank you. Mwah, back at you. So talking about permission to have fun. So Mark and I are in the car. We're heading up to Plymouth Plantation, and I'm sitting there like grinding my teeth, and am so pissed off that we're taking time to go have fun. Crazy. And looking at it in hindsight, it's completely ridiculous. But question for you is, do you need to give yourself permission to have fun? And if your answer is no, then my hat's off to you. Cheers, because you are one of the few. Now, it just so happened that there was another incident where we planned fun. This was, in fact, just last week. We wanted to go to a place that sells used books. And when this plan was laid out, probably 3 weeks ago, I was very specific to say, if I try and weasel out of this, please don't let me. Because, you know yourself, I know myself. I was pretty sure I was going to try and weasel out of it. And wouldn't you know it, there were a lot of things that happened, and it would have been a whole lot easier to not go. I would have gotten a couple more things done, but it was like, nope, made the commitment, we're going to do this, and go. Ended up having a fun time. It was great. Little, quality time together is always a good thing. But it was just the fact that I knew, just like you may, when you set time aside for fun in the midst of a busy schedule, it's really easy to let yourself get sidetracked. Especially if you have to, bring a lot of kids to different events and things, and it's all about, part of being a mom is about serving and being there, and showing up. But if you don't make time for yourself, please start to make that a priority. So the next thing on my list, and you may really appreciate this, Have you ever consciously given yourself permission to let go of something? When you think about all the crap that we tend to hold on to, because emotionally, or emotions rather, emotions are the one thing that we own that no one can take away from us. So many other things that come and go, but when you feel something, that's the one thing no one can ever take from you unless you give it to them. So permission to let go, I think that's a big one. It's almost as though it's in our, no, I was going to say it's almost like it's in the DNA. Maybe it's not. I don't think that everyone was born with that ability to hold on to things and not let go. But it's certainly a practice that we've observed, growing up or in our adult life, whether it's with a direct family or, it's people that are in our circles of influence that we spend a lot of time with. But I would invite you, the next time something gets under your skin that, maybe it's not a big deal, but maybe you were just, stressed out because you didn't get enough sleep, or maybe you're hungry. I don't know about you, but I get super cranky when I'm hungry and I haven't eaten. But maybe you can just let something go. Can you give yourself permission to let go? It could be, let go of the anger for the guy in the drive-thru who got your order wrong, and you didn't notice it until you were 5 miles up the road and had no time to turn back and to, get the right thing. Or can you give yourself permission to let go of something that you've been kicking yourself in the butt for? Gosh, only knows how long. I don't know about you, but there's certainly been things that I've held on to for a long time that I think as we get older, it gets a little easier to just give oneself a break and stop beating ourselves up about things. But surprisingly, I'm willing to bet there are at least 3 things that you could list right now or at any given time that you may feel you're holding on to because you have to. Maybe it's your moral obligation. Maybe it's your civic obligation. Maybe it's your familial obligation. Maybe you feel that you have to carry that torch for something. Well, you know what? I'm challenging you to give yourself permission to let go. It's not that hard. If you start off small and you do it just a little bit at a time, it will get easier. I promise, I promise, I promise. It will get easier. All right, next thing on my list. Oh boy, this is a good one. Guilt. Can anyone say guilt? G-U-I-L-T? Giving oneself permission to not feel guilt. That is a big one. Now, I'm going to play this guilt thing from 2 different sides, and here's why. A lot of times, when people ask for permission, they're doing so because they will be so overwrought with guilt for taking action and not asking permission. Well, when it comes to asking permission, I would invite you to look at what it is that you are essentially seeking approval for. Is that something that is completely self-serving, or is it around self-care? Because those are 2 completely different topics. And it's really easy to, when I was younger, I was called selfish all the time. When I was a teenager and an adolescent, I would always be called selfish. And there's a lot of my childhood that I don't remember, so I really can't give any specifics for that. But a lot of times that asking of permission is like seeking a validation or an acceptance of something that we want to do. And if you find that you're asking a person who normally like puts the kibosh or the poo-poo on something that you want to do because of their own stuff, I'm sure that you can imagine what that will do for the overall self-esteem, just for confidence. And once you get knocked down enough, you'll find, and I'm sure that you've seen this too, if you observe someone who's been constantly knocked down time and time again, when they go and ask for permission for something, energetically, they've already set themselves up to receive a no. So when I say energetically set themselves up, they're already putting off the vibe that they've gotten the no. And once that vibe is coming out, then you may notice something, like the head's down a little bit, maybe looking up over the, like forcing the eyes to look up. Maybe the shoulders are curled down. It's that tail between the legs approach where people are expecting a no. So they're responding as such. Now, it could be in those situations that this person is used to being controlled all the time. Life may have not started out like that for them. I firmly believe that all of us are born these little, spitballs of fire, ready to go out and conquer the world. Take a look at most toddlers. They have this fearless streak in them where they'll just go and explore anything. Can they be bothered with asking for permission? They're exploring. They need to experience things. It's all about, like touching and seeing and tasting and exploring reality and stretching the boundaries of that. But after a while, if a toddler is completely told no, 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 or they're like constantly punished for trying new things, or God forbid, like for failing, then how do you think they would feel when they went to try in something that was a little risky? Of course, they're not going to feel good about it, and there'll be this compulsion to ask for permission. There was a time when I was a teenager, completely stopped asking for permission, and then got into a marriage where the knight in shining armor, which he was, and very handsome at that, I was young, and that quickly turned into a situation of control. And I needed to ask permission for pretty much everything, and I used to hand over my paycheck. It was quite something. From personal experience, there was this strong independence and then the need to ask for permission. I firmly believe for those folks who are trapped in a situation where there's that chronic you need to ask, that if you have even one or two strong people and strong independent thinkers that are in your life, you will at some point come out of that. Something will happen where there'll be this realization, oh, you know what? I don't need to ask permission to go and do this. This is about like self-care. And then you'll start to look at it from a different perspective. But for some, it may take a little while to get there. But if you take little incremental steps, go just a little bit at a time, you will make progress. I promise. I absolutely promise you'll make progress. Oh, the next one. This is a fun one. Giving yourself permission to forgive. This falls in line with the letting go piece. But sometimes holding on to anger or resentment feels like the only thing we have. In some cases, it can be confused with empowerment. And the fact that holding on to this fuels us and gives us perhaps the tenacity to do something that we might not otherwise have. Well, it's like a sugar high. It's a false sense of hope. It's it's like burning the candle at both ends. It doesn't last for long. It is not self-sustaining. And in fact, it will become perpetually draining. And you can be certain that something parallel to this topic will come up in future Facebook Lives. But holding on to things and not forgiving someone, it doesn't feed us. It will drain you. And one thing I invite you to think about when you are holding on to something and you don't want to forgive another person, whatever it was that they did, and granted, yes, there will be some things completely that are a complete challenge for you to forgive. But whoever this other person is that you're having a hard time forgiving, they are a human being. They've got their own stuff. They've got their own set of triggers that invite them. I almost said make them, but it's not make them. They've got their own set of triggers that are almost, they produce visceral reactions, and sometimes the people don't know why. Sometimes people lash out because they feel like they're being attacked, when you might not be attacking them. But because of where they are, so wherever their mindset is, or wherever they are physically, whatever's going on, maybe, lack of sleep, lack of food, stuff going on at the office, something in their personal life that you have no idea is happening, all of those things can contribute to how a person shows up. And there's always, always, always a backstory. Always something that you don't know is happening. So that being said, forgiving might not be as complicated as it sounds. And here's another thing I invite you to look at also. When you get fired up about something, 9 times out of 10, you'll be taking it personally. I know I do. That's why I get fired up in the first place. But when that happens, if you could just take a minute and kind of step back from this situation and pause for a moment and take a deep breath, and then, if you can, 1, realize that you've just been triggered, and then number 2, see if you can separate the emotions that are coming up in you, if you can separate that from the facts of what just happened. And then if you can do that, you can separate, the fact from the emotion. Then, if you want to take it a step further, can you then take a look at what it is that you believe, and look at the truth of it. Why is it that you believe that to be true? And you may find there's something there to question. Maybe what you thought was a cut and dry, black and white truth, maybe that's not the case. So when you can explore things from those different perspectives, then forgiving is not so difficult. Now, forgiveness is not a one-shot deal. Just because you give yourself permission to forgive one time doesn't mean that you never have to give yourself permission again. You probably will. Forgiveness is never a one-shot deal. Okay, all right, I digress. Not never. Sometimes it can be a one-shot deal, like maybe for the person at the drive-thru that, got your coffee order wrong. However, if you can give yourself permission to forgive as often or as frequently, I guess that means the same thing, but if you can do that as much as is necessary until you've completely gotten past something and completely forgiven someone. It seems like a worthwhile investment of time. Now, forgiving someone is different than condoning a behavior. Very different things. It doesn't mean that you like what the person did. It doesn't mean you agree with the person. It just means that you are, you're cutting them a break for this. And just like you believe you deserve a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance or however many chances it takes, I invite you to question those people that you need to forgive and determine, are you prepared to continue to forgive them because you love them? It can be a tough question to answer. And you probably have, like me, you probably have a couple of people that you're thinking, can I do that? Well, sure you can. It may take time. Everyone has been through life and been hurt. There's always something that comes up that leaves an impact on us. Something happened that we didn't ask for, and it could be everything from a circumstance, a financial circumstance, a health circumstance, a relationship circumstance. Things happen all the time. But when you can give yourself permission on all kinds of fronts to see the situation a little bit differently, to maybe overlook something that's not that important, give yourself permission, here's a good one, to pick and choose your battles. Now, here's a really good analogy for this, for picking and choosing the battles. Remember when you first got into a relationship and everything was just all rainbows and unicorns and hunky-dory, and I've heard this before where, when you asked them to take out the trash and they'd be all happy and, practically prancing, oh, sure, I'm happy to do that. And then a year later or 2 years later, all of a sudden asking someone to take out the trash is just like an insurmountable effort. And that's when it's important to pick and choose the battles, because it's important to really work on the things that are bigger. I got distracted, a piece of tape gave way and something started to fall off the wall. It's the big things. If you want to keep getting riled up about the little things, well, that's going to add to the stress level, the tension here in the shoulders. It's going to contribute to not sleeping well. So if you want to keep getting riled up about little things, have at it. But if you can give yourself permission to let something go and to forgive, even once a day, or if once a day is too much, start off with once a week. Start little. Work your way up. It will make such a monumental difference. So, permission. When do you need to ask for it? Well, here's another way to take a look at that, because there's always, 2 or 3 sides to everything. So, instead of asking permission, you could ask for an opinion. Now, the caveat with that is when you ask for an opinion, ask it of someone you trust and someone you respect and someone who you believe will be supportive. Because if you've ever asked for an opinion from someone who lives in a state of fear or who plays a victim, I think you got a pretty good idea what kind of response you're going to get. There have been people in my life that over the years I've had to let go of because they would always they'd be believing that they were protecting me by always telling me to be careful. Oh, you want to watch out for this, you want to watch out for that. And there was a component of not understanding the situation from this perspective. All they could see was their perspective. All they knew how to show up as was the way that they've lived and through their experience. And it just, the time came when I had to say, okay, well, no, I love you, but then eventually our communication got farther and farther apart. And sometimes that is necessary. And that may feel like a tough thing to give yourself permission for, because you may feel, I mean, like I did, like you need to be the nurturer. You need to be the glue that holds a group together. You need to be there to support and to, sometimes it even turns into a codependency. And the only reason I say that, and I'm not taking it lightly, is because of experience. Been there, and it's happened more than once. And one of the things that it was important to let go of in my circumstance was the thought that I could have let that happen more than once. Like, how is it that I didn't see that before? And I mean, one could spend all day beating self up. Now, for those of you who caught us live, so glad that you were here. For those that are catching this on the replay, please, feel free to comment in the comment box if there is anything that, you feel is really difficult to grant permission for yourself. And I'm happy to offer you some words of encouragement, because if you have a desire for something, chances are you deserve it. And when we deprive ourselves, that doesn't do anyone any good either. Well, let's go. In fact, that's a really good segue, just to go back and visit again the difference between selfish and self-care. Massage, acupuncture, does that sound selfish? Maybe, but it is self-care. If you're a mother with young ones and you want to hire a babysitter so that you can go out for an hour and have a little peace and quiet, is that selfish? I don't think so. That would be very high in the self-care category. It's maintaining mental and emotional balance. Everyone needs a little bit of time to just shut down, to unplug, to withdraw, and to rejuvenate. That's something that it's probably a case of you needing to give yourself permission to do that more than you need to ask someone else to give you permission to do it. You may have been, for decades even, you may have been pushing yourself so hard that that's become the norm. And if you're not constantly busy, you may feel guilty about that. I can't be the only one who's gone through that. I'm sure of it. Lots of women I know experience that. But can you give yourself permission to slow down for 5 minutes and just take a couple deep breaths? I say this jokingly, but it's true. I've invited some of my clients in the past who are just running around like crazy busy, can't find time to say meditate. I would invite them to take an extra 3 minutes in the bathroom. You're in there, the door's closed, it's locked. Nobody knows what you're doing in there. So who's going to know? If you're just sitting there with your eyes closed, take a deep breath. Nobody's going to know. Or sit in your car for an extra 5 minutes and turn the radio off, turn the car off, and just sit there and enjoy the silence. It's really easy to get caught up in the habitual patterns of our life, the busyness, constantly moving from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and never taking time to just stop and chill. And it will do wonders for you. Just being in this room here, doing this Facebook Live, even though, I want to make sure that I'm covering the points that, that it seemed important to convey. But just sitting here on this lovely sheepskin rug, which you probably can't see, but being surrounded by the plants and the salt lamps, this is something where I can just take a deep breath. It doesn't feel like work. So what can you explore that doesn't need to feel like work, but that can be a source of sacred play, or just giving yourself permission to do something fun and sweet? All right, I just checked the time, so I'm a little bit past 7. I'll make a more of an effort to keep it to the 30 minutes next time. But I want to thank you for joining me, and I would love to invite you to get a free download that I've got on permission. So it's got some really good pointers on there to invite you to ask yourself some questions the next time that you feel you need permission. And yeah, all kinds of things to consider. So if you go to www.lesliekarenhammond.com/1do-you. So it's lesliekarenhammond.com/1do-you. So if you go on there and you put your name and your email in the boxes that are there, then I will happily share this great cheat sheet that will give you some questions to ask yourself and to ultimately answer the next time that you feel compelled to ask for permission. So many blessings, lots of love and light to you, whether it was live or on the replay. So we will see you next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And I invite you to share this, with your friends. Share it with other women who you feel might benefit from a little positive juju and a little pick-me-up and something that might help put a little skip in their